Jai Gurudev. Welcome to Shivaratri. So today's lecture, I chose a very dramatic title. Destruction is inevitable. Just at the begin to explain, this is an intermediate lecture, which means I suppose certain terms which I will use are common, and later on when I will use certain verses, I will give more context to that. Yeah, because for example, yesterday we had a meeting with newcomers from Austria, and Vandana was standing next to me, and then we started to speak, and then we suddenly realized whatever we said, I'm doing puja yesterday with my Bhakti and using this and that. So you just say 2 or 3 sentences and you realize you used 10 Sanskrit verses. But for us as devotees, it's somehow very normal. But then we need to retract and say, okay, we really need to explain word by word what it means. So today I can speak a little bit more fluent, and I wish you good enjoyment. So what can you expect today from this lecture? So I took Lord Shiva as the inspiration. Yeah, we know Shiva has many different aspects. He has many different qualities. And one of the quality he has is the quality to destroy. From the Hindu perspective, from the Sanatana Dharma perspective, destruction is not something very terrible, because everything is in cycles. Destruction is never standing by itself. There is always other forces into place, which is the creation, the perseverance, and the destruction. Nothing new can be done without the fundamental destruction beforehand. And the specific form of destruction today is the destruction of ignorance. Who wants that your ignorance is destroyed? Please raise your hands. Some not. Okay. I hope everybody will raise the hand. Yeah, okay. I guess everybody. And Guruji was last year, I think it was last year or 2 years, not sure, he was talking about that Shiva stands for this quality of destruction. Yeah? And yesterday, during online darshan, he was saying specifically, if you celebrate Mahashivaratri, you should not sleep. Sorry? Your ignorance is destroyed now. You know, sometimes there are in some cultural frameworks, we say ignorance is bliss. I'm not sure about it from a spiritual perspective, but yes, it's actually, there is a little truth in that. When you know something, it means we have a bigger responsibility to actually change that. Yeah? When you know that you should not do something, but you still do it, the consequences are much higher as if you don't know about it. And then I took actually from Canto 3, from the Srimad Bhagavatam, I took the story of Lord Brahma when he emerged from the lotus of Lord Vishnu. As we know, Lord Brahma, he is actually the deity which is responsible for creation, but as I said at the beginning, everything is one unity. Everything finds its place. There is creation, perseverance, and destruction. And we will look at his story of Lord Brahma, how he went from ignorance into knowledge of what is his purpose, what is his dharma, and who he is actually, and find the similarities to our life. And the scriptures which I chose are the Srimad Bhagavatam. I took also verses from the Upanishads and also from the Bhagavad Gita. So let's see first at Lord Shiva, why he is this inspiration of destruction. When we look just from the perspective of creation, yeah? Creation is not linear. It doesn't just happen in one line. Then it's destroyed and then black. That's it. Creation in Sanatana Dharma is always, it's Shrishti and Pralaya. It's always projection and it's always dissolution. When we look at the seasons, for example, 4 seasons, especially in some continents, you see it much stronger. There are some countries where you have like a almost permanent sunshine all the time. But for example, in Germany, very much present. Yeah, cold. Then we go to spring. Then it's summer and autumn. So everything is always in a cycle. When we look at the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna emphasizes one thing very much, and this is let go. Guruji said more than 80 times Krishna speaks about letting go. What do we let go? And this is something I want to emphasize so much in this lecture, because the ignorance what we have mainly is the ignorance that we think we are this body, we are this mind, we are these emotions and so on. So Krishna is asking Arjuna and everybody else, let go of this permanent me, I, or what we think we are. Everything is impermanent. As Guruji said once in a satsang, we age every day. We age every second. When you hoover your living room, the next day most probably you will find again dust in your room. Everything is impermanent. Everything is decaying. Which means, automatically, why should we hold something which is constantly in movement, in change? And this is what gives us this stress, this subconscious stress. We try to hold something, but it's always slipping from our hands. Destruction of old patterns. I like to give actually we can even observe it here very easily in this ashram. We are beings of patterns. Why? We like security. We like comfort zones. And we like to repeat always the same things. We like to give the example of when you go and having breakfast, when you're having lunch or dinner. Observe the people around you and yourself. Are you sitting always at the same place? I can see it, for example, when we go somewhere on vacation and so on. It's a complete new place. One person sits on a specific table. The next day, the chances that the person will sit on the same place is very high. Why? Because it's something familiar. It's something which we did already yesterday. So here, all these old patterns which keep us in this ignorance that we think, I am this body, I am this mind, needs to be destroyed. Also, Lord Shiva is a symbol of transformation, of rebirth. Yeah? For example, when we reincarnate, we have always new parents, we have always new friends, family, jobs, duties, but in between, there is always somebody which will never let us go. Who is that? We hold so much on this life, on whatever we know, because of our ignorance, and forgetting that we should hold on to somebody who was always with us in each life, between lives, who knows us from Always. I remember Guruji some years back, he told me some past incarnations. And then I look at him and then I ask him, do you really see all this? And then he looks at me with this deep, divine eyes, and then he says, I know each breath of you since beginning of time. And there was not a trace of, yeah, he's bluffing or whatever. It's just this deep knowingness when he looks at you, like Marian was just saying before, there is somebody who knows you how you are in reality. Doesn't know you just how you look, how you express yourself, know in this deepness how you are. And then the main theme of the lecture today is the destruction of ignorance. And I saw everybody raise their hands. We are very much interested, how can we destroy this ignorance? Ego death. Who wants that your ego dies? Again, not everybody. Translation is working? Okay. Some, not sure, okay. Well. It sounds funny, but actually, the ego is somebody who doesn't want to let go, of course. Yeah? It's an identity which we are keeping since so long. And I remember also some years back, and Guruji likes to give us often contrasts. Contrasts actually to see what we are actually taking for granted and what we are actually, miss out in life. Because when you have certain, moments in life where you go downhill, uphill, you actually realize whatever you had in your life is the most precious. And I was kneeling in front of him, and he looked again in my eyes, and he asked me, how much do you want God? And in that moment, it's like, and I will speak about it later, I perceived all these different layers around me. And I felt like I'm in the biggest prison of my life. And I said in a very hypocrite way, yes, Guruji, I want God very much. And he looks at me like this. And I knew in that moment, I perceived this hypocrisy saying, yes, I want God. Actually, what I perceived was just this prison where my Atma is covered. And then, the next day, I say goodbye to him. And then the contrast. And then Guruji tells me, one day I will give you a beautiful life. And instantly, without thinking, just a natural feeling arose inside of me. And I just said, but Guruji, I have already a beautiful life. You should have seen that smile on Guruji's face. He just opened his arms and we just hugged. And it was the most beautiful hug I ever had. Because I saw how he responded to that. This is what he's waiting. And it was the first time that actually I can say I perceived for 5 seconds something like humbleness. Yeah, outside of the many arrogant moments which I have in my life. But these 5 seconds, he showed me the essence of actually who we are. That we are always content. They are always happy. We just need to connect to that source. To the source which is always happy. How life, what God is giving us in each moment. And then, Bhakti as a destructive force. Did you ever heard that? Guruji was speaking in Shandilya Bhakti Sutra, Bhakti in 3 ways. So he said it's in 3 parts. And the first part is called Bhagat. So Bhagat means we feel a deep affection, belonging to God. The second quality of Bhakti is Seva. Bhakti is Seva. It's service. It's selflessness. And the third, what he was referring to Bhakti, is Bhanjana. So Bhanjana is that force which destroys everything which is not needed. And Guruji was specifically saying Bhakti in the form of Bhanjana is destroying that ignorance inside of us. So what is ignorance actually? There are many ways to describe ignorance. Ignorance is just we don't have the knowledge about something. But as I said at the beginning, when we know something and we don't apply it, and we say, okay, this is important in life and so on, we are automatically hypocrite. I am a hypocrite. Many of us are hypocrites. We say something, but we don't put it in practice. I remember Guruji when we've been recently in the pilgrimage with the residents. We were talking about the Bhagavad Gita, but he was stressing one thing, which was you need to understand the deeper understanding of the Bhagavad Gita. Not just read it like a novel, but really understanding this deep, what wants Krishna from us. That's why he's saying meditate upon the verses. And here, also Guruji, he was saying about 2 Shaktis. So these 2 Shaktis, he was referring in the Bhakti talks in America recently. So he was referring to these 2 Shaktis. So the first Shakti is Avarana Shakti. Avarana Shakti is the wheels of delusion which keep us from realizing our true blissful self. And the second one is Vikshepa Shakti, which is the power of dispersion. So the first Shakti, the first which keeps us in this ignorance is that we have all these wheels, what I was just referring to that with that experience which he gave me, which is covering our true self. So we can't see how reality actually is. And the second one, which keeps us in ignorance, is the Shakti which distorts our mind, which keeps us attracted to the drama of the outside world. But no worries. Guruji gives a solution to that. Because as we know, Maya, Shakti, it's very difficult to overcome. But he says 2 things, how we can overcome actually this ignorance, this delusional energy, which is chant the name of God. And second, constant remembrance of God. These 2 things. So when we look at the outside world, when we scroll through social media, or we look at the beauty of the world, everybody has different attractions. Yeah? Some are more attached to certain things, some are less attached to certain things. But here, it's important to understand, it's not the object which is attracting, it's this wheeling energy, this Shakti, which keeps us deluded in this ignorance. And how can we go out of that? By constant focus on the divine, by constant chanting of God's name. He gave also something very sweet in the Bhakti talk about the 2 Shaktis. So Guruji was saying, the Lord's grace flowing from his lotus feet calms the mind and gradually melts away all unwanted desires. The senses are withdrawn into the mind and the mind is focused on Bhagavan. Through this process, the mind and senses are divinized. The mind and senses are divinized. Simple. Just focus on his lotus feet, chant the name, everything else he will take care. Just focusing on his lotus feet melts away all unwanted desires. Amazing. So knowledge and ignorance. Thanks God. Looking at this verse from the Shvetashvetara Upanishad, we realize the following. Two things, knowledge and ignorance, are set down in the imperishable and infinite fort of Brahman, where they lie hidden. Now, ignorance is perishable, and knowledge is the immortal. But the one who rules over both knowledge and ignorance is another. So here we see, this knowledge is eternal. Like we see when Krishna is speaking to Arjuna, he didn't give the Bhagavad Gita just to Arjuna in that specific moment. He gave it before already. In other yugas, he gave it also already. And in other yugas again, and again, and again, and again. When another yuga starts, and we are hopefully not here anymore, Krishna will come again, and will give again this knowledge. Why? Because it's eternal. And why it's important to have a certain specific knowledge. If we don't apply knowledge which connects our imperishable, infinite, immortal self to something which has the same nature, which is Sat Chit Ananda, truth, consciousness, and bliss, all other knowledge is absolutely useless. Yes, we can be very good in mathematics, we can be very good in certain subjects, but if we don't apply a knowledge directly from the source where we're coming from, how we want to come there? We need to apply that knowledge coming from that source where we are coming from. Guruji says something beautifully. When you're so attached to your pride and ego, you are drained of that energy. It doesn't mean that the energy is not there. It is there, but you're focusing that energy in the wrong place. And pride and ego consume lots of energy. It takes lots of energy to think about yourself. It takes a lot of energy to think about yourself. Why Guruji is not tired? I remember somebody told me once, why he's all the time just limitless, full of energy. And he said, because the energy is not stuck inside of him. He just gives. Guruji is not thinking about himself. But what we are doing, even in simple conversations, even when we have the knowledge that we are not that body, we are that Atma, we should serve and so on, we have simple conversations and our mind, instead of listening what a person is saying, we are thinking, oh, how am I perceived? Do I look good? How my hair looks like? Oh my God, I'm so this and that. Constant thinking about ourselves. How am I perceived by the others? And it's so subtle sometimes that we are absolutely not aware. Constantly thinking, what does this person think about me? Ignorance. Now we come to the story of Lord Brahma. So Lord Brahma, he emerged out of a lotus from the navel of Lord Vishnu. It's a beautiful, beautiful story. I really recommend it to read it. When I was reading it over and over, that story, I just catch myself in saying just like, wow. The description, how first, because there is no creation yet, and so Lord Vishnu, he decides that he wants to create a new universe. So out of his navel, he concentrates his energy, and out of this beautiful lotus, Lord Brahma appears. And then, what does he say? Lord Brahma, it's in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 8, verse 18. Lord Brahma in his ignorance contemplated, who am I that am situated on the top of this lotus? Wherefrom has it sprouted? There must be something downwards, and that from which this lotus has grown must be within the water. So he's looking at his situation. He sees his body, he sees where he's sitting, and he sees that there has to be some source. So what does he do? He's following down because he's thinking there is some ocean. For sure, there has to be some source. And he's walking, but he can't find it. And the similar we have in our life. If we don't ask the essential questions, who am I? What I'm doing here? Who sent me here? How will we live every day when I wake up in the morning? We will think about what I was just saying before. About ourselves. This self which is in ignorance. We think we are that body. We think we are these senses. We think we are that mind. So what is the driving force that I wake up in the morning, I go to work, I sustain my family, and so on? What is the driving force? Very often it's very egoistic. Even if it looks in the outside, yes, I'm serving society, I'm serving my family, and so on. But if we don't ask these essential questions, what I'm doing here, what is my function actually? What's the use? Now, being in Austria, and I was speaking to newcomers, and I asked the people in that room, what are the essential questions in life? And everybody said the same. Not being devotee, not being in Bhakti Marga with Guruji, everybody said, yeah, I want to know who I am. I want to know where I'm coming from. I want to know who sent me here. And then I said, we have a good news here. By the way, you are an eternal, blissful, ever-knowing, loving, so many beautiful qualities being. You are divine. And hearing that, for some people, for the very first time, it's like a shock. But actually, we should ask ourselves, even being on that path, every day I should ask myself the same question: who am I? Who sent me here? And how can I have the relationship with the one who sent me here? And it has to be a deep, deep, deep inquiry. Otherwise, we go in auto-robot. Even myself here in the ashram, if I don't wake up with the right foot in the morning, I don't set my intention, why go to prayers, why I do my seva, why I do that, I will go again into my patterns. Even being in the ashram. And this is what Guruji is stressing so much. We have to have this super sharp awareness of everything. How often we heard it from pujaris being around Guruji. 1 second, you're not conscious of what's happening around you, of what he is doing in that moment, immediately he points it out. A few months back, I was serving here Guruji, what was it? I don't remember. he was sitting here on the asana, and for a few hours, I was just, I think it was Guru Purnima. No? Yeah. Oh no, his birthday. No. Okay. I'm very bad in this. So I was serving him, and my mind was constantly attached to him. Even looking on the right side, even when I turned my back to him, constantly I had his image in my mind. And everything went smooth. He didn't point out any single mistake. I really felt connected to him. Everything was beautiful. 1 second, I looked at my watch and I lost my vision of his image in my mind. Just looked at my watch for shortly, and I was distracted. In that moment, he looked at me and said, out. But it was just 2 seconds. Doesn't matter. And these are experiences which shows me how much he actually expects from us. It's not just in the morning, I wake up, I say my mantra, no. I sit down, I go into my feeling, I visualize his form, I set my intention, and I ask humbly, Narayan, please allow me to serve you. Please allow me to serve you. Because otherwise it's just like, of course, yeah, I serve God, it's normal and so on. But it's in that feeling of gratitude that we actually make that connection. It's not in chanting 1,000 mantras and so on. It's actually this conscious awareness why I'm doing what I'm doing, why I'm here. Like here, Lord Brahma is asking who I am, that I'm situated on the top of this lotus. And then, after a futile approaches, he tried and tried and tried to find the source who actually created him. He realized the following. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 8, Verse 21. Thereafter, being unable to achieve the desired destination, he retired from such searching and came back again to the top of the lotus. Thus, controlling all objectives, he concentrated his mind on the Supreme Lord. So what happened here? He has this deep knowledge. He knows that actually I can find these essential answers to these essential questions only when I go on that journey inside. You see, I don't know if you can see that picture. It's basically a person who is worshipping the material life. You see there cars, cakes, all these different sense objects. Because actually, basically, imagine, God shows you everything what you have been contemplated on in this life. I guess the list will be even much bigger. Why are we doing this? We try through sense pleasures, through catching, trying to get this fulfillment in the outside world. We try and try and try, and it's futile. But there is something beautiful, what Krishna says. And this is why we are all sitting here, which makes our life very, very special. So he says the following. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, verse 19. At the end of many births, the one who has true knowledge surrenders to me, realizing that Krishna is everything. Such a person is very rare. I found that verse absolutely astonishing. Because here he says, we realize that actually God is everything. It's a natural process. Nobody needs to even tell you, hey, it's very important to focus on God. We realized it by ourselves. I don't know how you came to Guruji, to Bhakti Marga, to Hinduism. Everybody has their own story. But very often, I hear that something was just not filled up. Something was just not matching. And then suddenly, we ask this great question, okay, who am I? Why I'm here? Who sent me here? It's natural. I remember there was a video, and it stuck with my mind, of a monk. And he was just giving casually a satsang, and suddenly he just went into the description where he attained realization. So he was a realized monk, and everything is on camera. And suddenly he just describes the moment where the realization happened. So he described it, how everything just from one second to the other changed. His perception changed. Everything was just in absolute clarity. And the moment when he described it, he was just in tears for minutes and minutes and minutes. It's on camera, he just crying. And he realized how beautiful that moment was. Because he realized that everything was in front of his face. All the time, so close. But actually the biggest pain, what gave him was to see, because he could see all his incarnations. And the biggest pain, what gave him was how often he did the same mistake. Over and over, life after life. He saw himself doing the same stupidity. And this was so painful to see for him that he begged everybody in that room, please, take your life sincere. You don't want that you make again the same mistake. He saw all his bodies lying, and he said, you can cover the whole country with my bodies. And it's just, wow. And when I hear something like this, it gives me the understanding why Guruji is so strict with us. Why when he gives satsang, he is constantly talking to the specific ignorant self, wake up, don't mess it up now. It's really not the time anymore to make the same mistakes. As I said at the beginning, when we want to go from ignorance to knowledge, it means we apply the knowledge slowly and slowly. Otherwise, one life, again next life, again next life. I remember some years back, before Guruji, it was actually the critical moment of my life. So after, as I said before, you try to find happiness in all these objects of desire. And then came a moment in my life, I was playing in a techno club and came home, was still drunk, and I met my mother and we spoke. I think it was on the 2nd January. And we both looked at each other and she said, you really need to change. And I realized by myself, yeah, I need to change. And then I said, okay, the best way, I need to go out of my common circumstances. Because my people around me, atheists, just taking drugs, going to clubs, party. I was working in the bank, just greediness, just absolute the opposite of what I'm just looking now here. Absolute opposite. Nobody believed in God, just party, just work, just money, greed. I was surrounded by this kind of people mostly. But there was still this emptiness. And then I said, okay, I need to change my life. And I remember I came out of the house and I was walking up a hill and I was contemplating about it, what I spoke with my mother. And suddenly, a deep thought immersed. And the thought was just like pure rejoicement. Yes, I will travel, I will change my life. And I was just crying the whole hill when I was walking up. And the feeling which I got in that moment was like, wow, finally, your next chapter has begun now. It was like Guruji was saying, a page is turning. Slowly from that ignorant, covered self, somebody asked the right question, which was in that moment myself. I said, is there more in life? And then the journey started. I went to India, went to ashrams, and then I met Guruji shortly after that. And now comes something very interesting. Who sends us actually the invitation? So Guruji, yes, that's Guruji. Who is the cause that we actually want to wake up? Yeah? Guruji speaks on as a comment in the Bhagavad Gita. It is me who inspires one to rise above desire. I am the one who gives the strength to rise above duality and see the oneness. I am also the one who is striving for awakening. It is me who gives one the awareness to see the limitation and to divert from the limitation, so that one can perceive beyond Prakriti. I am this eternal perfection, seated beyond any duality. Amazing. Like when I read this, we see who gives this inspiration to us, that we want to wake up. Very often, our ego, if we walk the spiritual path, starts to become having a spiritual ego. So it speaks a certain language to our mind. It speaks a certain language that we can easily mix it up. It's my soul talking to me. So when we look at this commentary of Guruji, he says that it's God who is giving this inspiration. He is the one who gives this striving for awakening. So he sends out this letter to each and everybody. And this is something I was contemplating on just recently quite a lot. Everybody who is sitting in this room, or in your Sangha, or in your country, everywhere, the person you will meet who comes into contact with Guruji, Bhakti Marga, with God, you know that this person was personally invited. Which means we have been invited to take shelter at Guruji, to take shelter at Srimad Narayan, which means we are all in this one house, which makes us a spiritual family. So a spiritual family is something which goes beyond even normal physical families. Why? Because the reason why we meet, why we engage with each other, is one that we have the same goal. We want to serve. Like Guruji said, the three aspects of Bhakti is, one of them is seva. As a spiritual family, one of the qualities which we always should cultivate every day is to serve each other, the whole family. Because otherwise, we can fall into this trap where we say, of course, it's me who goes above the duality. It's me who woke up. It's me who want to rise above desire. There's a funny quote which says, now when I conquered my ego, I am the best of everybody. Somehow it describes a spiritual ego. Me, I'm conquering the mind and so on. But actually not. Here Guruji is saying in that commentary, it is me, God, who gives one the awareness to see the limitation. Just by knowing that gives a little bit of humbling, hopefully. Whenever you see some limitations, some ignorance inside of you, it is by the grace of God which is giving you this. Perseverance. Okay, we received the invitation. We are all here. But now what to do? Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 8, verse 22. At the end of Brahma's 100 years, when his meditation was complete, he developed the required knowledge. And as a result, he could see in his heart the Supreme within himself, whom he could not see before with the greatest endeavor. So here we see, and Brahma sees, that the Supreme Lord is situated inside his heart. How often Guruji says, God is inside of your heart. But then when we meditate, do we see God inside of our heart? Like lying nicely on Adishesh, relaxing, Mahalakshmi pressing his feet. We see all his servants around. Somebody sees that clearly, like a vision. Raise your hands, please. Oh, one, okay. Good. Here, Brahma, he sees the Supreme within himself after when he completed his meditation. In another verse, it says he was meditating for more than 100 years of his years, which is much more than human years. I don't want to count now, but it's a lot. Yeah. So he could see suddenly the Supreme within himself, and he could not see with the greatest endeavor. Which endeavor? He tried to find the Supreme Lord in the outside. He tried to find the source. Where does this lotus come from? So he sees, after the long and many years of penance, he sees the Supreme Lord inside of him. And perseverance, like Lord Brahma, is absolutely necessary in our life. Guruji said in the Shandili Bhakti Sutra, there are three qualities how God manifests and shows himself to us. First, innocence. Second, purity. And third, perseverance. I myself, I know I'm not pure. I'm also not innocent. Maybe as a child I was innocent. But one thing, what I know, what I can cultivate more and more and more, like what we can see in all the several stories of saints, how persevered they have been, how much they strived for that goal to achieve. And this is a quality I see what Guruji is, he puts it in such a podest. I never heard Guruji saying, oh, that person gave up after 2 weeks. Amazing. No. He's stressing people who, no matter what, don't give up. No matter what, don't give up. And to perceive that kind of quality, sometimes in our life, it's just beautiful. And one of the experiences which is connected to this was some years back, was during Corona. And it was also a time I was not very fit, not very active. So I'm working also in the office mostly. So before, all my muscles slowly going away. And I'm serving Lakshmi. So, and when this Lakshmi at the front, the smaller one, she's kind of heavy, yeah. So we had Navaratri, and the first day of Navaratri, we do a parikrama around the ashram. So waiting for Guruji, I take Lakshmi on my hands, and after a few minutes, I realize, wow, everybody's watching, music is going wild. I don't also want to be perceived as a very weak person, especially, it's, men have certain attachment. It's like when you say to Mataji something like you look like this and this, is like the worst what you can say. But if you say to a man, you look weak, he'll probably not speak to you for 1 year at least. It's a specific, how to say, weakness. So we want to perceive it as very strong. No? So I'm standing there, Guruji is not appearing. I was thinking, making plans, okay, what to do. Maybe I can put Lakshmi somewhere, but been waiting already on the parking lot outside. So, okay, what to do? And I'm going, and I'm immersed only on my pity self, not really thinking about her well-being. And then Guruji comes after a few minutes, and my mind already like, I don't know how I survived this. Like, my hands almost fallen down. Like, and we haven't even started the parikrama. Okay, and then he comes to me, and I don't realize that her crown fell down. And then he comes to me in an angry mode, and he says, look, you're thinking only about yourself. Look, her crown fell down. And then I realized, yeah, it's true. I was just thinking about myself. And then he said, focus only on her. Focus only on her. And I said, okay, let's do this. Let's survive. I really need a miracle. So I'm focusing only on Lakshmi, and I start to talk to her. Okay, Ma, we are into that together. You're quite heavy. Please help me somehow. But nothing happens. Yeah, she's still heavy. And I said, okay, I use everything what I have, all my mental energy, just focus on her, as Guruji said. Guru Adesh, just do what he said. So focus on her, nothing else. Like nothing existed around myself. Just looking at her and say, Ma, I hope you have a good ride. Just look around, it's nice, the weather is nice. And just looking at her, and suddenly, because my mind was just attached to her, I was persevering in that process. All these thoughts of, you can't do this, it's too heavy, you need to rest, all these thoughts I ignored ignored, ignored, and only focus on her. And suddenly, I'm not joking, I felt like my arms is like a strong energy, like Hulk Hogan or the Hulk, I don't know. Just my arms, there was no pain, no suffering, nothing. Just holding her, and everything was just relaxed. And my mind started to like, whoa, what's happening here? But then again, like, I hope this doesn't stop. Because I really need that divine interference, what is just happening now to me. And then when we arrived at the spot, then I actually realized how much I was actually tired. And then the consequences have been, I started to work out a little bit more. Yeah, so it's important. Spirituality is not just meditation, not just knowledge, it's also sometimes a little bit of sport. Yeah. And now we come to the awards of that penance, which is a goal which, from worldly minded people, actually doesn't make any sense. Yeah. So the Srimad Bhagavatam says in Canto 3, chapter 8, verse 26, the Lord showed his lotus feet by raising them. His lotus feet are the source of all awards, achieved by devotional service, free from material contamination. Such awards are for those who worship him in pure devotion. The splendor of the transcendental rays from his moon-like toenails and fingernails appeared like the petals of a flower. When you read that canto in the Srimad Bhagavatam, how Lord Brahma is perceiving the Lord lying. He's describing him like a giant. He's everywhere present. Brilliance, like everything, like his beauty is mocking everything around him. This is how it's written. His beauty is mocking the mountains. It's mocking the diamonds. It's mocking this and that and this. There is nothing more beautiful than his form. But here we see he showed his lotus feet by raising them. So when somebody asks you, okay, you're a devotee, what are you focusing on? I'm focusing on the lotus feet of the Lord. Okay. But why? First of all, the lotus or the feet are a symbol of humility. When Guruji was speaking about Ram Navami, he spoke about Hanuman. Hanuman being an incarnation of Shiva, who is all-powerful, who can do whatever he wants, who can destroy the whole world just with a finger click, who can destroy Lanka with just a click of his finger. Lord Hanuman, where is his gaze when he speaks to Lord Ram? When Lord Hanuman, the all-powerful Shiva incarnation, when he himself, his gaze is only on the lotus feet of the Lord, who are we then? Guruji said, the body, the transcendental cosmic form of the Lord is too much to grasp for our mind. So we need to give the mind a simple focus where our attention should be. And Guruji was saying in the Shandila Bhakti Sutra, only with continuous self-analysis that changes will happen to destroy this ignorance. Self-analysis. Where is my focus? Ignorance consumed. So Guruji says in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 5, when you're fully absorbed into the divine, you don't need anybody's confirmation. that automatically will shine through you. You will glow. Here the glow is not an external glow, but a glow from the inside out, and that glow reflects upon you. That glow will consume every trace of ignorance in the body, in the mind, everywhere. And that's what will set you free. So when we combine these two verses, Lord Vishnu, Lord Narayan raised his lotus feet to show this is where you should have your focus on. And then what Guruji says here in the next commentary, he says, when you're fully absorbed into the divine, you don't need anybody's confirmation. It will consume every trace of ignorance in the body, in the mind, everywhere. So just by focusing on the right place. Because his lotus feet are not limited. They are eternal, always. They will always exist, like our true self. So our true self has to be focused on something which has the same qualities. Sometimes I did a technique that's not a teaching of Guruji. Yeah, it's just an individual, but it was interesting for me to see. I was having my watch, and during the day, I was counting the minutes, how often I am actually focused on having the divine image of God. And then actually you can see and you can perceive how much you are actually thinking of mundane things, of the past, of the future, desires, and so on, and how much you're actually trying to do your best to visualize the form of the Lord inside of your mind. And that's an amazing, it's like counting calories, I don't know. But you see somehow you can, thanks to Kali Yuga, yeah, Kali Yuga is actually amazing, sometimes a lot of comfort, that we have always something where we can remind our mind. Even taking our mobile phone, yeah? I have on my mobile phone always an image of Guruji or of God. Even on my watch. Just looking at the image of God constantly when I look at my time. Reminding myself constantly. And then comes finally the answer of Lord Narayana. He says to Brahma, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 9, verse 30, O Brahma, situate yourself in penance and meditation, and follow the principles of knowledge to receive my favor. By these actions, you will be able to understand everything from within your heart. By these actions, you will be able to understand everything from within your heart. So what can we emphasize in this verse? He says, situate yourself in penance and meditation. So he was doing already his penance. He was doing his effort. He was striving to achieve his goal. And the next and the most important, he was following the principles of knowledge. How often we hear that the most pleasing thing to God or Guru is just to follow the instructions. For worldly minded people, to hear something like, yes, obedience is very important. For them, they think like you're brainwashed. But then I like to make the example to where everybody is obedient. Imagine your boss tells you, please come tomorrow at 9 o'clock to work, and you say, not sure. Or you're practicing music, and your teacher tells you, play this note in that way. And you say, no, can I play it in that way? But your teacher is actually Pavarotti. Is he good, Pavarotti? I don't know, just came to So, wherever we go in life, we are obedient to our bosses, hopefully to our parents, I don't know, to the teachers. Why? What are the intentions why we are obedient? Very often it's just like a selfish reason, or fear of losing the job, fear of being told off. The same intentions we should not have in the spiritual perspective. Doing our sadhana, reading the scriptures, doing what Guruji is asking from us out of fear is just absolute nonsense. And if we do it, we should really sit with us and have, as I call it, brutal honesty. And just look at ourselves and ask why I'm actually following what he is asking. Do it out of fear, or when he sees me during darshan, that he doesn't tell me off and so on. The reason should be a complete different one. The reason should be, I do it out of love. I do it because I love you. I do it because I have this eagerness to find out the answers to these questions, which I was stressing so much at the beginning. Who am I? What is my relationship to God? Who is God? I think I haven't seen, like when Guruji speaks about certain devotees, saints, when he says how much they have this striving, how much they have this absorption into God, how much have this joy as reading the scriptures. But this happens only when I sit, analyze myself, and find the answers why I'm actually do what I'm doing. And it's such a relieving moment. I had this couple of months back. I was just sitting down and I said, I will be so brutally honest to me like never ever I have done in my life. And I realized I do many things not from the right perspective. And only when I acknowledged that, when I saw I do it from a very selfish reason, then actually the change could happen. And not just pretending, yeah, I do it because of that. So here, following the instructions. So Guruji says in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 5, through the knowledge of the self, through meditating on the Srimad Bhagavad Gita and put it into practice, one takes the path of Bhakti. One becomes aware of the Atma. To become spiritual means that you have the awareness that you are not only this body, you are not only this mind. You realize that you are the individual soul. And in that state, you praise the Lord and love the Lord. And then you ascend to such a degree that you perceive the Lord continuously within yourself and have the great joy, the bliss to serve. And that's something very beautiful. This is something only people, devotees, understand. When you have the awareness that you are not only this body, you're not only this mind, you realize you're the individual soul, you praise the Lord and love the Lord. When I was reading this, it gave me an understanding why people who look at us practicing bhakti, why they can't understand what we are doing. It starts with a different understanding and awareness. Like Guruji says here, just the awareness that I'm the soul gives this realization, and I praise the Lord and love the Lord. When I was looking at newcomers coming for darshan, specifically one lady some years back, she was standing in line, very much business-minded, very much career-oriented, very much talking about career and all this stuff and so on. And I had a conversation with her. And then she went for darshan, and she came back with tears in her eyes. And how she was after that, she was a different person. Like, I'm not saying like completely transformed, but the experience, this awareness, like Guruji is saying here, she felt something inside of her that suddenly you want to praise the Lord, you want to love the Lord. But it starts, you need to feel that. You need to have an experience, at least a little bit. And then automatically you want, as he says here, praise the Lord and love the Lord. Otherwise, I totally, to be honest, understand. When somebody looks at me, hasn't felt not even once a little bit of that love, looks at me, they say like, what are you doing? You're wasting your life. And one of that experience also connected to this was some years back, I was in a work and I had the most negative people around me. Very greedy, just even cheating the people. And I was immediately an enemy for them just because I said, no, I don't want to do this. I don't want to adventure into that. Just standing my ground and saying, no, I will not do that. I will not cheat these people. Immediately I was an enemy. And I was surrounded by this kind of mindset. And I went for darshan. And this was in my mind, trying to understand why they don't see what I see. Why they don't... I even showed them pictures of Guruji, spoke about it. There was no click. It was still the same pattern of behavior. So I went darshan, Guruji was giving darshan in a darshan hall. And this was in my mind. Why are my colleagues how they are? So I went, sit down in front of Guruji. Guruji came, and I haven't seen him for many months. And he came, sat on his asana, and I looked at him. It was just absolute emptiness inside of me. Completely in the mind. I haven't felt even an inch. It was scary. The feeling I had was absolutely scary. I said, what's going on? Why I feel like this? And suddenly, a thought emerged inside of me which said, this is why your colleagues are how they are. And in that moment, suddenly, this feeling came back, this normal perception of myself, of Guruji, and so on. And this was a huge lesson for me, not to judge people. Because if you feel like this, how I felt in that moment, no love, no connection, just pure mental agitation in your mind, I absolutely understand that they say that why are you worshiping God? It doesn't make sense. Why are you praising the Lord and love the Lord? When you don't feel it firstly inside of you, nobody will understand. Coming slowly to the end. I found this in the Katha Upanishad, very interesting. So here it says, know the self as a rider in a chariot, and the body as simply the chariot. Know the intellect as a charioteer, and the mind as simply the reins. So knowing who is actually the rider, who is in the chariot. The chariot itself is not us. It's our body. There is one who is above that body, above that mind, above that intellect. And this is the self. And this is what Guruji is stressing so much when somebody is going through hard times. He's not saying, yeah, go into a weakness, just observe your weakness and change it. He says, know who is actually stronger than your senses and your mind. Just by knowing that, gives a feeling of like, I have this under control. I can tell my mind where to focus on. Otherwise, we just make a feeling like, oh my God, this negativity, don't. And we go in our weakness forgetting that we have the Supreme Lord. We have God behind us, giving us that power to make this discrimination, to make the choice where to focus on. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 9, verse 42. People are wrongly attached to the gross and subtle bodies, but they should be attached to me only. So here we see, he speaks to Brahma. People are attached to all the gross and subtle bodies, but they should be attached to me only. Over and over and over and over we hear this. Attaching our minds to God. Why? As I said at the beginning, Maya is powerful. I remember when Swami Ruda was asking Guruji, what should he pray for? And then Guruji said, one of the best prayers is to pray that we don't get deluded with Maya, something around that. To always pray not to lose the attachment to the Guru and God. Because by ourselves, we will not make it. When we look at the story of the Mahabharata in the Bhagavad Gita, who represents Bhishma, who is laying on the floor, pierced by arrows? The ego. But the ego cannot submit itself. Who is on the other side of the Pandavas? Humility. But who? The Pandavas, Krishna. The Pandavas have Krishna. The Kauravas are much more in number. Strong, powerful, terrifying. The Pandavas are much less. The army is much smaller. But there is Krishna with them. Like I said at the beginning, this ego cannot be killed, submitted by ourselves. We opened the box of Pandora. We have been listening to the invitation. The only problem now is, because we listened to that invitation, we started a war. Why do you think the Bhagavad Gita plays on a battlefield? It could play like in a beautiful rose garden or, I don't know, somewhere in a village, some kids playing around. It plays on a battlefield. Why God is stressing so much, attach yourself to me, attach yourself to me? Arjuna had to be attached to Krishna. Do you think he would have won the war by himself? No. So it's inevitable. We need to attach our minds to God. We are in the middle of that battlefield. We see our negative sides, we see our positive sides, but we have Krishna on our side. How Myron was Was it Marga? No, satsang today in the morning. Satsang in the morning. Samikeshava. When we start the spiritual life, everything gets, how to call it? Faster, yeah? We have the feeling somehow we are just running, one thing after the other. This is exactly this. We started a war inside of us because the ego doesn't want to let go. The ego doesn't want to give your identity back. Otherwise, Krishna would not say in chapter 6, verse 6, your mind is your worst enemy, uncontrolled, or your best friend. What's the solution? Attaching to God. Then we can win this war. And then, last but not least, why we can fail? We have much more to lose than any mundane person. When I was listening, sometimes you hear stories which is happening, that somebody goes away from the spiritual path. And actually, Guruji was saying to certain people that you have waited to meet me thousands of incarnations. He was even saying precise year to people, when was the last time when they met? It was not the last incarnation. You can count thousands of years. That's why this life is absolutely important. We cannot make, like I said before with the story of the monk, we cannot make the same mistakes we did before. There's too much on the stake. I saw Guruji in tears when somebody left the spiritual path. Because he sees what you can get when you persevere, when you go through that. He sees what you can get and what we choose instead of. I can't imagine that pain to see. Like, imagine, you know where the person can be, what they can achieve in this life. And then through that mistake, we go back to this mundane. So Krishna says, Bhagavad Gita 18:59, if you give into pride and think I will not fight, your resolve will be futile, for your own nature will compel you to act. So it's only pride so that we don't listen. And as I said before, when I was contemplating why I'm doing certain things, why I'm not following his Adesh 100%, I almost always came to the same conclusion, it's pride. In all the different subtle forms. What happened to Arjuna shortly after he saw the Vishwarupa? Story with Barbaric. So later on, when Barbaric is telling the story, what happened on the battlefield, that Krishna had his Sudarshana chakra on each arrow of Arjuna. And Arjuna and the Pandavas, they think they conquered the enemy. Again, shortly after, they forgot what Krishna was telling to Arjuna. Again, he went into his pride and thinking, it was me who conquered it. Like I said to before, the spiritual pride, it is me who have this awareness. It is me who wants to rise above desire. It is me who is doing this. So here Krishna says, only because of pride we will fall. So summary, I choose pictures. I heard the mind works with symbols. I don't know if you remembered anything which I said today. But I spoke with Simon Rude yesterday, and he told me, people listen so often to my lectures. When I ask them, what did you remember? And often, the one thing which I remember was the one tree which I draw, which symbolized a certain quality. I don't remember which one. So that's why I choose pictures here. So as a summary, we took Shiva as the inspiration. Why? Because as Guruji said, he is that destructive force. He is the one who destroys ignorance. So choose that day of Mahashivaratri. Stay awake. Do whatever is possible. Because Guruji says it helps to conquer actually the mind. Just yesterday he said it in the Online Darshan. So Shiva represents that aspect, to destroy that ignorance. The ignorance of thinking that we need all these pleasures of life, of Maya. The ignorance that we think we are a limited being, a body, a mind, emotions. But here we receive the knowledge which is eternal. This eternal knowledge gives us the understanding that we are much more than this body and mind. And when we have this understanding, we ask the right questions, we see that the striving for desires is futile, a natural process arises. So we want only Krishna. Try and error, try and error, try and error. We try, it doesn't work. Try, it doesn't work. Try, it doesn't work. And suddenly at the end, okay, Krishna is the highest. And then Krishna, he is the one who inspires us, is the sixth picture. He inspires us. He awakens that striving inside of us. Picture 7. Through perseverance, we do our best. Because as Guruji says, perseverance is this quality where God manifests, a part of purity and innocence. We focus our mind on the lotus feet of the Lord, because it's the highest object which exists. We receive the knowledge from God that we should follow the principles, that we should understand that everything comes from within our heart. And then we contemplate on the Lord, and through that contemplation, through that quality of Bhakti, which is Bhanjana, we destroy that ignorance. And then we realize the destruction of ignorance is inevitable. So, which is a very good thing. If I know that it's inevitable, that one day I will come to the Lord, I just enjoy my ride. So, I wish you a beautiful Mahashivaratri and have a nice day. Jai Gurudev.